filming yourself in a cinematic way, making your life feel like a movie, or romanticizing your life.
It is kind of a strange topic when you think about it. It's not something that's really talked about that much, but at the same time, most YouTubers film themselves in some way or other.
Learning how to do it is something that can really help improve your filmmaking, but there is a difference between just simply vlogging and trying to make your videos look and feel like you're in a little film. So in this video, I wanted to show you how I do it for our videos,
including all of the little tips and tricks that I've picked up along the way,
and the gear I use, etc, etc. Now I am very run and gun with my filmmaking because I'm also normally trying to do photography at the same time, so I would say this is quite a minimal, nothing fancy about it way of filming yourself cinematically. Let's start with angles and compositions because that might just well be the most important thing. So what I do to try and get the most pleasing compositions that I can is literally think of every video shot like it's a photo. So I pretty much use all the same principles that I use when I'm taking a photo, like the rule of thirds, foreground elements, depth, etc, etc. I also always have the rule of thirds grid on my screen when I'm recording video, just to make sure that I can line things up, everything's aligned, and I also make sure that the built-in level is displayed on screen as well. There's something about shots not being level that really annoys me, so I always have that on screen, and it's just a really quick and easy way to make sure your shot is level. So let's just take this shot for example. You can clearly see that I'm using the rule of thirds to frame this one up, placing the path where I'm going to enter the scene on the right hand third, and then using the sun in the background to add a nice glow and also some depth as it shines right across and towards the left hand side of the frame. These compositions are quite simple, but I really like them and I think they work really well. And here's just another quick example, this time with a very centered subject. I wanted to have this shot pretty much squared up with the building, have it centered, and this is where the rule of thirds grid comes in really handy, and the level. You can make sure that the shot is level and then use the rule of thirds grid to perfectly center the building and just make sure that your vertical lines are straight and your horizontal lines are straight, and yeah, just a nice clean straight on shot. I really love using these in videos. And when you're getting all your footage, you also kind of want to follow the 3-shot rule, which is get an establishing shot or a wide shot, get a tighter shot, and then get a really close-up or texture shot, as I like to call them. And also don't forget from time to time to use some interesting angles just to mix things up, whether this is like a POV shot or just something a little bit more creative to add some interest to your shots. Now obviously focusing is super important, whether you're focusing on a person or a subject, but also the way you focus is almost just as important, I think. Now a lot of the time when I'm shooting, I'll use manual mode with the X-T30 or the X-T3, because obviously I can't adjust focus if I'm in front of the camera. But if there's a shot where I want the camera to continuously focus on me and adjust, I make sure that my focusing settings in camera are dialed way down, so it slowly changes focus from one subject to the other, or follows you, but it's quite slow, so you don't notice any focus breathing or anything like that, which just gives off kind of an amateur feel with your videos, especially when you're trying to make them feel cinematic. So make sure to change those settings in your camera for continuous focusing. Slow things down a little bit and you'll get that slow, almost focus pull to whatever your camera's going to focus on. Now, as I said, I'm very run and gun with my shooting, so there's no sliders or anything to give me camera movement. Every shot is pretty much static and on the tripod, so from time to time, just to add a little bit of movements in the shot, I will just use keyframes to slowly zoom in or zoom out, or maybe a little sideways motion too. Nothing too extreme, just some gradual movement. And I find that this just adds a nice effect to the shots, and it can also help transition from one clip to the other. When it comes to gear, I don't really have that much yet. I don't really like carrying around a big rucksack full of gear because it just kind of makes the process of filming things a lot harder. I do have two cameras. I have the X-T3 that I'm using now and the X-T30 with an 18-55mm, which is kind of my go-to video lens because I can zoom in, zoom out, get different compositions, and I also have the 35mm f2, which I've used a few times in this video. It's my more recent lens and I do like how it looks, so I probably will use it more for video. But I have a couple of tripods, I have a very cheap little accessory which comes in very useful, which is sitting right on top of the camera, and it's a little selfie mirror thing that I got off Amazon because neither of my cameras have a flip out or articulating screen. So I can currently see myself now using that little cheap plastic mirror that's on the top. Pretty handy. And I have some other little bits and pieces, white balance cards, stuff like that. Lights, which I'm currently using now, but nothing really expensive and not really a lot of stuff. A huge part of making a video look and feel more cinematic is actually how it looks, getting that filmic look, as people say.
So that's what it sounds like when you're in an empty room and you did a bad job of trying to soundproof. My office needs big improvements in that department. When it comes to audio though, the goal is to try and get the mic as close to you as possible, whether that's a lav mic, a boom mic, or any other mic really, and that's a whole topic in itself. But anyway, as I was about to say before I cut myself off, I think a lot of that cinematic film look comes down to dynamic range. Now this is obviously where a better camera and bigger files can come in handy, shooting log for example, and being able to retain details in the highlights and the shadows, allowing more room in post for a nice colour grade. As nice as that is, I don't think it's totally necessary to get a cinematic look. You can still certainly create cinematic footage on any camera if you know what you're doing. Just learn its limitations and try to work with them to give yourself the nicest looking footage from whatever camera you have. As we are talking about colour grading, I would just like to quickly thank Dehancer for giving me access to the Dehancer plugin, which I actually use to colour grade the F-log footage in this video. You can install the Dehancer plugin and use it right in Premiere Pro, which is what I done. It takes a little getting used to, but it's quite a neat tool for getting many different film looks with your footage. I used the Kodak Vision 3 200T look on this video and then made some tweaks within the plugin, and I think it looks pretty nice. I am actually looking forward to trying it on some other footage, ideally outdoors next time. But so far it's working pretty nicely. Dehancer haven't paid us for this video, but they did give us our own coupon code, so feel free to download the free trial, and if you like Dehancer you can get a 10% discount with the code MACandTeens. Frame rate is also super important. 23.976 or 24 frames per second gives that cinematic look. So make sure that this is the frame rate of your final video. Now you can film in higher frame rates if you want slow motion, but if not, then avoid frame rates like 30, 50 or 60 frames per second. Really wide angle lenses also tend to make things look more home video than cinematic. I don't particularly like the look for video, so if you have a zoom lens, zoom in a bit more or use longer primes to give a more natural cinematic look. I use our 18-55mm Fuji lens for video, and I rarely ever shoot at 18mm. It just looks so much nicer when you zoom in and get some nice compression and depth with the shot. I think that's pretty much everything I can share when it comes to making cinematic videos. It does take a little bit longer than obviously just vlogging and not worrying about how things look and how things are framed up and stuff. But it is pretty nice when it comes to editing and you have this nice collection of really cinematic looking footage all planned out and the shots look great. So yeah, it's quite fun to do. So yeah, I would recommend filming things and trying to make it cinematic and see how it goes for you. And hopefully those tips and tricks that I just shared help you out. But that's pretty much it for this one. So if you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, maybe consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video. As we always say, take it easy, don't be a stranger.